Broadcast. Welcome to the 33rd episode of the Zaner MarketCast, abbreviated MarketCast. Today, we want to get in and get out a few things that we felt we just had to mention. So we jumped in here today on Thursday, one day in front of the WASDE, which is tomorrow, Friday at 11 a.m. I'm Joe Nikruto. I'm here with...
And Hussey, everybody. It's a good thing we're having this discussion, bringing everyone up to date ahead of a WASDE report, right? I don't know if everyone heard. We also had this election occur.
Minor thing.
Just a little bit. Just a little something happened this week. So, it's like, I almost forgot we had a WASDE this weekend to that point,
Before we get started, we want to let everybody know. Before we get started, we want to let everybody know if you're interested in hearing about grain market movements and strategies daily, you can sign up for the Ag Hedge hotline hosted by expert market strategist Ted Seifried every day, totally free, gives you the chance to connect with us personally if you have any specific questions about the markets or agricultural commodities as a whole. Ted is going to give you a daily update, normally 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you are learning more about how this price action works and how to make it work for you, it is a perfect way to take that first step. Link is in the description below to sign up for that. Totally free, zero commitment. And here we are, Dan, one day removed from that momentous occasion, but we do indeed, and 45 minutes or so removed from quarter point interest rate cut. But we do have WASDE in front of us tomorrow. Had a few things happen today, some ideas about what could take place tomorrow and what folks should look at. Where do you want to start?
Let's just go over real quick. And, the elephant in the room is we're 40 cents up off the lows, right? And from yesterday, 20 cents up off 22 cents up today on beans, right? All things aside, right? Maybe a little bit of the reason we're catching this bid outside of, speculation going into a report tomorrow. I don't know. You've got to wonder if there isn't somebody out there that needs soybeans that's buying them up here. And hasn't, otherwise, caused the market to go from 982 lows just yesterday to a 27 high today?
On significant volume, right? And
yes.
in what we could describe insufficiently as a risk-on environment. Dow futures up.
Absolutely.
Dow was up 1,400 points. Dollar was screaming. So that's an interesting
point
was
too. Even up too, right? Yeah. I mean, we've got...
You see huge movement in beans from 980 and change to 1020. What is that? 1026.
26 quarter to close the day with a high of 1027 and 3/4. And
that
the
was volume on that. Huge, highest volume we've seen on the duration of this chart was yesterday and almost today. Yeah,
I mean, the volume there was like a week's worth of volume in the last, comparatively so. I mean, it's head turning, right? Head turning.
So we're implying that one of our largest customers, China, might be in the market, and even if it isn't, you think even if this is just money managers allocating, that's big volume. And certainly we'd be thrilled to see China here trying to pick up some supplies before President Trump comes to town. But that's big volume, and whoever's doing that buying appear to be rather committed, at least so far, huh?
And it came after the election, right? Game theory this out, players in the market, what's changed? They're at a crossroads because of a regime change in the United States. Yeah, there was a technical, move above a trend line there in beans, and we're above the 18-day, and you can say all that until you're blue in your face. But if there's a big player that can cause this type of price action based off of a change in event, it sure does look a lot like China trying to maybe gobble up some beans, get some business done ahead of, a Trump administration, where we know the last time around there were tariffs, trade windfalls, and things that got in the way of that type of trade. We'd like to think, right, that agriculture and other things would be off the table, but we don't know. And if you're China and you need it, makes sense to maybe get a little bit of it when prices are low ahead of some uncertainty, right? So we'll see.
For sure. Yeah. How about anything in the WASDE tomorrow, potential surprises that we might talk about now? What would you see? Where are you going to see a surprise in production?
I think the big question, right, the trade wants to see is, had we seen the high level for production out of the USDA? And that's what tomorrow's report will kind of confirm or not, right? We're expecting to see a little bit of a deduction there. Soybean yields coming down. Trade guess is expecting 53.1 there, expecting them to drop to 53.2, or a drop from 53.2 in September's report. Would drop production, another 7 million, I think, bushels is what I calculated compared to September. But, that's kind of non-consequential when you compare to, some other questions that we might have out there, like the demand questions, right? And how soybeans have been lacking another word term, for lack of a better term, in that demand side. And the question of, hey, if the recent uptick in exports that we've seen continues, will the USDA reflect any of those numbers and change some of that here going forward, right? We don't expect too much out of our, the raw yield and production number changing. So I do think this is one of those reports, as Ted would say, you've got to really dive down into those finer details and see where the USDA is making those changes internally on the balance sheet to try to get a better understanding of what they're going through or where they're coming from here.
Still, we're on the lookout for some sort of surprise. Ending stocks numbers last month was what, 550 million. Now they're talking about 0.532 billion. So 530 million was the average number, right? You see that range. Ending stocks. I don't see how. I'll be interested to see ending stocks be one of those surprises, right?
Yep.
I'm not sure we could be surprised there.
And we know if it's not going to be coming from a major reduction in production, the only other place it's got to be is how we've eaten away at that ground pile in demand somewhere. And we've seen some great demand out of fresh numbers recently, but fresh demand is usually not something we ever see changed on the WASDE report. That comes slowly and over time. So exports are really, where you're left with it, and some of that feed and residual too, because another kicker in the hole that we're not talking about in the row crops and across the agricultural sector here, not to hijack the conversation, but cattle shortages going into next year that might come down the pipeline, and what that could mean for, aggregate demand in the row crops. And I don't know. I think that you're not going to see much on the headline here on the report. But like Joe said, the surprises might be coming from deeper inside.
Dr. Darren Peel, I think that's his name. I caught him yesterday morning on RFD TV, and he put up a graphic about heifer retention. And I know we're required by rule to talk about that every time we mention cattle and the size of that cattle herd, and it just isn't changing. The percentages there, that you have got to stop. That it was the heifer slaughter rate, and it's not where it needs to be to signal that retention. So that's very interesting. And he felt strongly that puts any talk about retention out into next year, well into next year. And so I don't know what to say about that.
More mouths to feed, man.
That is what it is, right?
More mouths to feed, right? Yeah.
And so export sales in beans, not bad today. Right at the high end of the range, looking great. You're up 17% year over year. Nothing wrong with that. What about, how about corn? Any potential for surprises in corn?
Again, on those yield and production numbers, we're expecting the trade has a guess here of 183.4 for the trade guess and yield. That's a reduction of 0.2 bushels an acre. That, is a little bigger of a drop in production. We're expecting 15.155 from the analyst trade guess there, a billion bushels corn compared to 15.186, 30 billion reduction in production. Okay, nothing to sneeze at. I mean, we're talking about a similar change in ending stocks to beans, but corn exports are where things have really been off the charts this year, and not enough people have been talking about it. Seeing the surprises there. Again, I don't think we're going to see them on the headline, yield and production number, but when you dial down into those into the finer tooth, there could be some surprises elsewhere in this report, particularly on the demand side.
Exports expected to increase by 50 million bushels, and I thought I saw the ADM guy say maybe that's not even enough.
And if that's not enough, now you're talking at least 80 million, and 80 to 100 million in shift in total ending stock numbers. I mean, okay, now we're talking about a shift in corn that may changed the current dynamic of the trades mindset.
And then you starting to see some talk about out there, not out there, which maybe we don't traffic in so much. Makes for great Facebook content, but for us,
there's a reason basis has been strong in certain parts of the country, right? Like,
absolutely,
it's simple supply and demand economics.
So what the market is trying to litigate is the bin door locked, which I find hard to believe, because everybody that we talk to, you catch them in a truck. You know what I mean? People are moving this stuff. Ethanol, the ethanol numbers are stout. I mean, ethanol's chewing it up. So it's very interesting to see how this plays out, and that the idea that the corn balance sheet may be tighter than we think it is something that has to be paid attention to, especially within the context of yesterday and today's price action, right? I mean, Dan, by any stretch of the imagination, that's a breakout.
It is. And today might have been beans catching up with corn's breakout to that point. You know, corn did a lot of its lifting yesterday, getting through its technical trend line resistance, getting above the 18 and 55-day moving averages. Now, you know, cleared all of them and even cleared the old highs of, you know, October. Well, not the opening highs of October, but the end of the month highs of October, the swing highs. Beans caught up with the corn proverbially today in that respect, and trading now higher highs and higher lows for a couple of days running. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth green close in a row for corn. That's nothing to sneeze at.
In an environment where funds are on the bid, they bought 18,000 contracts yesterday. They were short, allegedly, what it was at 19,000. It was not a very large number. The market may find that the funds are long corn. Either
I was going to say, do you think
CFTC,
we have flipped long corn? There's an argument to me made we could be getting close to beans. 2 days, I feel like they need another day.
Yeah,
when you
got a
see
way to go
volume,
yet.
When you see volume at these levels, man, what they can hide in there these days is incredible. You know, 50,000 swings can occur, I feel like.
Absolutely right. And that's and what I'm saying is, when you take this picture as a whole, right, technical breakout, this to me, we're in an uptrend. You know, some question about whether the trend is, I think this is an uptrend, right? But what's the definition? So you got your shorter term moving averages crossing over. You've got volume moving in the direction of price. It looks right. And you and I have been here throughout the summer where we got to points like this where we said, oh, it looks so great. That makes me slightly nervous because we have been here before.
I remember this close in beans, right? Where you close just like this. And then it's like by Friday close, you're like, what did just happen? You know,
predicting the future is certainly difficult, but what we would say to producers is watch this fund trader. As long as they're on the bid, I find it hard to believe, you know, I find it difficult to think that this trend is going to change if the fund trader remains on the bid.
Mm-hmm. And I can't disagree. You know, there's no reason for them to stop covering. There's no reason for the market to not continue higher, you know, while that's occurring. I mean, it'll find itself in a short-term technical uptrend. We'll find a period of price discovery higher, find a better reason to sell off from a higher price, perhaps, right? And then, you know, we'll go from there. But we just try to take it, you know, the next 10, 15, 20 cents at a time. And while we'd like to think that we can all call this and say, hey, the harvest low is certainly in place, all we know for this, you know, for the time being is that we have found support. The market rallied back through short-term resistance and is continuing to hold support above those levels, beginning an uptrend, like Joe said.
$4 has been our line in the sand, and we have been above $4 for some time. You got to go all the way back to early October to see a test of $4.
Yeah, and only spent a small period of time in August below 4.
Moments. Yeah, right? Yeah,
you know.
Matter of days. And so very interesting that we appear to have identified a true value area and that we are rallying off of that value area in a time of increased demand.
It's definitely a good look for the constructive price action in the near term for row crops.
Big export sales today, yeah?
Yeah, pretty big export sales there. Do you have them in front of you? Don't, I'll get them.
Oh, I got it right here. Range was 1,700 to 2,500. 2,767 was the actual number. That's 48%, an increase of 48% year over year.
Pretty good.
That's pretty stout. Yeah, that's pretty stout. And taken as a whole, you know, certainly makes re-ownership in corn something that has to be on the table, right? I mean, if you've got seasonal and technical strength, there's easy ways to re-own this stuff. That's outside the purview of this conversation. We don't want to keep you too long, but
that's exactly why you need to get in touch with Joe or I in this type of situation. And if you've enjoyed everything we have to talk about, right, you can get in touch with us over here at Zaner Ag Hedge. Leave us likes and comments in the section below, or click on the link to get a question answered right here on air. That's why we're here, and we're always happy to have the engagement with you guys and find out what you want to know more.
Before we jump, do we talk about wheat? Don't really anticipate much in the way of changes in tomorrow's WASDE.
I feel bad. I not even prepare the idea of what tomorrow for WASDE could mean. The chart for wheat for the last 2 weeks has lulled me to sleep. I'm not expecting any major changes.
Talk about that technical picture where we have been basically on the open and the close. I mean, we've been dojied out now.
Yeah, right. I mean, 580 to 560, and we close every day at 570. What more is Chicago wheat want?
Yeah. And we're trapped in the land of spaghetti there. All of the moving averages almost within the day's range for the last 4, 5, 6 trading sessions. I mean, it's just a ridiculous look on this chart. My suspicion, or rather, let me throw it at you. What is your suspicion? We're not going to be here long.
No, this is what we refer to as the accumulation phase, right? Right before the market, I don't want to say is manipulated or is determined outside of that accumulation phase, but this is where volume has built. If you look, we've had pretty steady 60 to 90,000 contract volume for the last 2 weeks every day. Today, we upticked into 91,000. We didn't move outside of our range very much. I mean, it was a higher high, but yesterday's outside price action closing at 570, none of that changes anything, right? What I see is volume accumulation in a tight range, which means stops above 580 and below 560 are probably prone to get run. I wouldn't be surprised to see us hit 581 and 559 to trigger both sides of that order book, but I see accumulation of volume and participation happening. This market's not going to sit here for very long. It's got potential energy now from market participants and their stops are what move this market in either direction.
Tenuous grip on wheat fundamental in terms of what Russia can or will do, but there is some talk that the Russians have been exporting the heck out of that wheat crop, and sooner or later will have less to export, and that could lead to some opportunity for wheat producers here in the U.S. if that is reflected in these Western wheat prices, I guess is what I would say.
So make an argument that if you are just as bearish or bullish, or you're finding a reason to have an opinion on soybeans because of Trump getting into Trump into office in China, then you probably have an interesting opinion about the wheat market and Trump getting in and potential for peace with the Ukraine and Russia. I don't know which way it means, but I suspect that the Ukrainian-Russian crisis will probably get some pressure to be resolved, which is not necessarily a bullish fundamental development for wheat. If all of a sudden all of that Russian and Black Sea wheat can hit the market, which I would argue it already is, but if it truth, the market will probably react to that rather negatively, even if it doesn't sustain a sell-off. So we'll see. And not that I'm still, of course, hoping for peace, but we cannot discount the fact that wheat does trade a wartime bid and a chaos bid, if you will, when it wants to.
Certainly something to think about, no doubt about it. Dan, why don't we? Are we going to come back and do it again tomorrow?
Yeah, guys, we'll be back here after the WASDE to bring you all the updates that the USDA dropped, how the market price action may have affected things, and of course where those numbers settled to get you guys all updated on the newest market news.
Perfect.
Have a great day, everybody.
I'll meet you back here.
Yeah, we'll see everybody back here tomorrow as price action develops. Take care, everyone.